Welcome to Positive Living, and today what we're going to do is we're going to have a little look into my channel and the sort of content you can expect moving forwards, not only on my YouTube but my other platforms as well. Also going to have a look at my new ebook that I've just released, which you can download on my website below and which should hopefully pop up here. I've always just wanted to do that, so hopefully I've edited that in correctly. Before we get started, I'll just tell you a little bit more about myself, just so you can get to know me a little bit better and how I sort of come to where I am at the moment. For those that know me will know that this has been in the pipeline for quite a while, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. I've sort of had it written down in my notes, all the content I'm going to produce. And I've finally, like a lot of people with a lot of things at the moment, I've got around to actually coming about and doing it. In all honesty, I've just been putting it off and making excuses of why I couldn't and why I haven't been able to. But in quarantine, I've run out of excuses. There's nowhere to hide, so I've started it. Started creating my ebook, released that, and here I am now. A little bit about me of why I sort of started fitness and where I sort of came from was very much that cliche story of, I was probably about 16, about 15, 16 when I started taking note of what I looked like and what I didn't like, which is typically like a lot of us at that sort of age. And like I said, I was very much that cliche, ectomorph, long, skinny limbs. I had no muscle mass whatsoever. It's really, to be perfectly honest, hate the way I looked. So I really wanted to go about changing it to be as simple as possible. I really just wanted to change the way I look. And of course you see these like perfect bodies floating around on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. And it's not that I wanted to necessarily go straight to that. And I knew that wasn't that realistic of a goal, but that's ultimately what I wanted to look like. So around about the age of sort of like 17, I started going to the gym with my friend who works at David Lloyd actually at the time. So I managed to get a +1 free membership. Shout out Frankie for that, because that was a lifesaver. Even though we used to spend most of the time in the luxury spa, but we'll look past that. So yeah, I started around 17. Like I said, I was horribly skinny and I just did not like the way I looked. It became apparent to me as I started going to the gym more frequently and speaking to more people and getting into the whole sort of idea of health and fitness, is there is just an abundance of information floating about from everyone, and everyone is shouting a different thing. Everyone is saying how to train like this, and everyone is saying to eat this, and everyone is saying not to eat this and to train like this and to eat at specific times and do certain reps and whatnot. And when you start training or lifting weights or whatever it may be, it's completely daunting, because of course you know that you have little to no knowledge. So the only knowledge I was actually getting was from people that I was going with at the time, and that was my training. So I had no set sort of schedule. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just sort of followed, tried to learn the basic nutrition. I was just eating healthy and thought I'm obviously going to achieve my goals. Supplementation, I was just drinking whey protein thinking, I'm going to get massive. This is a pretty foolproof plan. Don't know why everyone moans about this so much. It's easy. Obviously, as time went on, like I said, I realized there was so much information out there and so many conflicts and ideas. And I really just wanted to sort of hear one clear voice. And it takes a while to watch a lot of content and watch a lot of content producers to start realizing who do you actually trust and who is actually just there to sell you a plan, a supplement, an ebook. Ironically, obviously I don't charge for mine and mine's free in the link below. So when I moved to uni and I was 18 and I really sort of got into the whole concept of fitness and sort of bodybuilding, if you like, and changing the way I look, I always sort of vowed to myself that whenever I got in a position where I was very comfortable in my knowledge, where I was very comfortable in the sort of way I executed things in terms of lifts and training, I was always going to put out content to be as helpful and informative to people as much as I possibly could, because ultimately when I started, what I really was crying out for, what I really wanted was someone with no ulterior motive, someone that wasn't trying to sell me something, that could just turn around to me in my Facebook DMs and say, okay, you're simply not eating this many calories. This is what you're currently doing. This is what you currently should be doing. This is the sort of training you're doing. Have you ever thought of this? And just helping me along the way. But it's a lot to ask. You're asking someone to go very much out of their way. It can often take quite a long time to explain. And in the world of health and fitness, which makes it such a confusing industry, is it's so easy to monetize distributing that information. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not against people doing that, not in the slightest. And there's many people out there that create fantastic value in their content and charge for it. But at the same time, I always wanted to be that person that just had full transparency, full honesty, and just distributed it all for free. Because like I say in my book, I was never comfortable with the idea that, and again, this doesn't relate to everybody in the industry, but I was never comfortable with the idea of people exploiting people's insecurities and almost preying on the weak, which I was. like that's completely what I was, and I was very much that vulnerable person in such a sort of scary environment. If someone said, okay, this is how you look a certain way and this is how you get a certain way, whether it was a plan or a training split or to buy their meal plan, they tap into a part of you that says, I want to achieve my goals and I'll do that at any costs, and therefore that cost can be 20, 30 pounds. And for me at the time, I was a university student, so like a lot of people that sort of come into the industry typically will be around that age, and obviously disposable income is at a low, so that wasn't the only reason, but that was definitely a factor. I wanted to make sure that it was accessible to everyone, no matter how much money they sort of had to spend, because that information is out there and it is readily available. It just takes people, of course, time to research it and people to implement it, and of course through trial and error. And that's why I sort of vowed as well, when I was able to do my level 2 and 3 PT courses, which I completed my 2 back in October and I've got my level 3 in June. I wanted to sort of have that certificate along with the work I sort of put in with the hours, just to be like, this is coming from a place you can trust. So that's exactly what I set out to do, and it's exactly what I'm intending to do, and hence why I'm sort of creating this content. So let's get into the actual book, which I'm going to do again is here. And again, you can download it in the link below, which is a link to my website. And if you just scroll down 2 paragraphs, you just can click download and it just goes straight into a PDF format. We're going to start off with the first chapter, which is in the book, which is supplementation. So this for me, when I started, and even up till relatively recently, is such a confusing topic, and this is why I included it, because as any of you will know, whether you're an avid fitness goer and you're very invested to the industry, or you're a relative newbie, everything you see is bright, flashy, in your face, bold promises, everything's on sale, and you have no idea what does what and if it works. It's just so confusing, and there is so much out there claiming to do all sorts. So what I've done in the section is I've really broke down in a nice sort of graph format what are the top supplements within the industry, what are the top supplements that I personally use and that I've seen positive effects from, the pros, the cons for them, and an actual explanation. So I actually rank the supplements in terms of what's most necessary when you're training. Like I said, there's so many marketing ploys out there that you'd be surprised how many supplements are on the market that are not even scientifically backed and potentially have no benefit to you whatsoever. And even if the company was to argue there was some minute scientific backing towards their product, I go on to mention in the book that it's very important to understand to what extent is it actually improving me overall, because a lot of the time it can technically be correct what they're claiming by 0.001%. So is it true? Yes, but is it going to have a real impact on you? Probably not. It's also important to understand what we don't actually need and what we can ignore, because that accounts for quite a lot of the industry. You would be surprised. So I made a really sort of easy grid to have a look at the pros and the cons and what not to waste your time on, because like I said, that 0.001% for the average gym goer like myself, or like you watching it, is not going to necessarily require that, and the opportunity cost of paying for that supplement on a monthly or weekly basis, whatever it is, completely is outweighed by the fact that it doesn't even do a lot for you. So the next chapter I speak about in the book is training, which naturally sounds like one of the most important ones, and of course it is. And again, I'll just gloss over a few of the main sort of topics that I speak about. Some of the most important that I talk about are those training fundamentals. They're small logistics and small tweaks that very much can make that difference to your training. So within the book, I've created a sort of checklist in terms of how you should be executing each lift. It will include basics such as posture, breathing, picking the right weight, but it also moves into the territory of performing your sets and your reps at the correct tempo. Now, why this may seem quite futile and pretty standard to a lot of people, when you actually break it down, it is one of the biggest changes I made to my training, and one of the biggest changes that really had a positive impact to me. And that very much is just performing everything at a slow enough pace. Tempos differ from exercise to exercise, and there's not a universal set time, but for a bicep curl, for example, you sort of work off the tempo of 1, 2, 3 moving down, and then 1 or 2 seconds moving up. Now, like I said, this may seem quite basic. However, typically you'll find yourself rushing reps or not even concentrating on reps without even realizing you're going through the motions and you're quite passive in your workouts. What tempo allows you to do is really break down and understand the exercise whilst you're doing it and really feel the full benefits of it. So I always say to my friends when I go and train with them, one of of the most important things is efficiency. If I perform 100 reps and my friend performs 100 reps of the same exercise, if my efficiency is 100% or close to 100% on every rep, I can genuinely have a better workout with 3 sets of a chest fly than he can for an hour and a half with chest, if he doesn't tick off all the boxes on the checklist and ultimately create the correct tempo. Because what this allows you to do is, whilst you're slowing everything down, you can tweak your body to make sure that you're, like I said, making the lift as efficient as possible. So, but also what this allows you to do is make sure, okay, so my shoulders are retracted. Voice broke, crap. My shoulders are retracted, my wrist is the right angle, my wrists are straight, they're strong, I'm holding the dumbbell in the right position, I'm engaging my biceps. And you can think about all of this really consciously whilst you perform it at a slow tempo. Whereas when you imagine or you look at people just smashing out really quick reps, there's no thought process behind what they're doing. And often, and I say often, 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, there will always be large areas to improve for that person. But because they perform it so quickly, they won't even necessarily realise or notice. So that little box of checklist really is a fundamental that I was put in there that I would strongly advise everyone of any standard to go revise, have a look at. I say revise, not learning a test. Go and have a look over it and really drum it into your brain, because once you implement that into your training, all of those points, it just becomes second nature, and the quality and the efficiency of your workouts just improves tenfold. And you really then go into the gym, like I said, and maximize the time that you're in there. I remember hearing an influencer on YouTube talking about it once and said, I can have a better chest workout with 3 sets of chest press and walk out the gym than someone can have if they do an hour and a half, 2 hours on it. And it really resonated with me, and when I thought about it, it really is true. If you can perform and execute those reps and those sets perfectly, it just really is a game changer. You come out finally feeling the muscles that you're meant to be feeling, and you finally feel blood in the areas you're meant to, and you don't have aches and pains in your secondary muscles and your shoulders because your form's correct, your posture's correct, and you're engaging the right muscles. Like I said, I won't dive into every topic, but another sort of main topic that I include is muscle-mind connection, which is again something, and I'm not going to say this with everything, I promise you, but again is something that completely changed the way I trained ever since I found out about it. I genuinely went 2 or 3 years of watching a lot of fitness content without ever hearing the words muscle-mind connection. I didn't even know what it was, and I'd never heard of it. And I watched Arnold Schwarzenegger's Blueprint to Cut, if anyone's seen it. And he goes into the gym and he's been interviewed, and it's about the way he trains and it's about his day-to-day life. And the interviewer was sort of asking him about the people he trained with. And he said he would go in there with his friends who would train the same intensity, the same reps, the same workout, the same amount of times per week. They were doing nothing differently. And I remember Arnie saying he was so much bigger and he was so much better than all these people. And the interviewer was a little bit confused naturally and said, like, why is this? What can you put this down to? And he said, my muscle-mind connection is better than anyone else in this gym and no one else thinks about it. And I had no idea what he was talking about, to be perfectly honest. And he started talking about it and it sounded very sort of hyper spiritual, and I was a little bit skeptical about it, but he really spoke about it and he went into depth. He said when you're working out and you activate a muscle, the way he goes about it is he really analyzes that entire muscle. If he's in front of a mirror, he'll stay in front of the mirror, or if he can look at the muscle with just while he's performing the exercise, then he will. And he says he goes into the muscle and he watches, I'm not going to do the impression, he goes into the muscle. I was going to impress it, it wasn't, was it? He then said he goes into that muscle and really thinks about the entire process. He imagines those muscle fibers ripping and contracting and all the blood that he's squeezing in there. And he said he thinks about it so vividly and intently, the connection he can get with his muscles and the pump they can get with his muscles is tenfold better. So again, like anything, like how I started off the video with trial and error, I went to the gym and naturally tried this out, and I was a little bit shocked and a little bit concerned because I thought, I've trained for 2-3 years and I've never known this. I wish I'd done this sooner. But it really is true. So it's like what I said, it sort of pairs in with the tempo. So once you correct the tempo and once you correct the muscle-mind connection, you'll honestly find yourself performing 10 reps of bicep curl on a weight that you've always done comfortably, and suddenly that weight becomes ridiculously challenging and your muscles are just screaming. So obviously training goes on to sort of speak about other topics that are important, like training frequency and how much rest should I have and how long to spend in the gym and how long for my rest periods and whatnot, and little tips and tricks along the way. Like I said, it's a base and a foundation to understand and take away with you, but also something that I can develop on in future videos. So obviously I'm going to go in a lot more depth and hopefully provide a lot more information in terms of all the aspects I've spoke about within training. Okay, so now we'll move on to nutrition, which some people would argue is the most important topic, which they would have a case for. However, it's sort of a three-pronged attack, and you can't have one without the other. The truth is, for achieving your goals, nutrition is huge, and this is usually the one where I find most mistakes with people that are trying to achieve their goals and that cannot. Like I did back in the day, I didn't realize, because I was eating quite a lot of food, I thought I was eating a lot of calories and I wasn't tracking my calories. So I was eating a lot of food, but of course quantity doesn't account for density. So you can eat a lot of food, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's dense in calories. So I was eating a lot of food and I was training, and I wasn't making much progression, if any progression at all, in terms of in front of the mirror, on the scales. After a while, I sort of solely put it down to genetics, and I was like, oh, I'm doing everything perfectly, it must be genetics. I'm destined to never put on any muscle at all, which makes me laugh looking back on, because it's just ridiculous and it is not true. But you do find yourself in that position, and I didn't understand at the time how important nutrition was. And ultimately, from the people that I received messages off on quite a consistent basis, usually the answer always comes down to nutrition, because there's so much confusion around it within the industry, and people are just picking different bits of information from so many different influences and so many things I've read online and so many myths, that they get into this big pool of confusion and think they have to do some drastic secret diet to achieve their goal, whether that's build muscle or lose fat. And I just want to sort of say at this point, before we sort of go on to nutrition, is you do have to eat the correct calories to achieve your goals. So if you want to add on size, you're going to have to be in a surplus correctly and increase that incrementally. And if you want to lose fat, you have to be in a deficit, and vice versa. However, people get really thrown off by nutrition and think, oh, go onto the back of a packet and I've got to count all these calories and it's just not the life for me, it's not the life for me. And it makes me laugh when people say that to me, because people naturally think I eat just chicken, broccoli and rice, and it couldn't be further from the truth, because ultimately the more you sort of understand nutrition and the more you understand your body, you understand you can eat a lot of the foods that you enjoy and eat pretty much all of the foods you enjoy. It's just about understanding, and it's just about knowledge. I go into it in quite a lot of depth in my book, but I always want to make it clear that to achieve your goals, you don't have to sacrifice the things you like. And alternatively as well, if you don't care to count calories, then that's absolutely fine. It's completely okay. It's the exact same as people that want to. However, you cannot then be one of those people that turns around and says, oh, I don't want to count my calories. That's absolutely fine, but you can never then be annoyed at not achieving your goals, because if you aren't putting in that strategy there, ultimately that will never happen. Potentially you could make some progress, luckily. So you sort of have to pick and choose it. But like what I was going to say is, a lot of people think that, and I thought personally at the start as well, you sort of go into the back of packets and, oh, it's 134 calories per 100 grams and it's 720 grams, and you sat there all day writing down with a pen and paper. I don't know what they did back in the day, but we have MyFitnessPal now, which the little logo is in the book, and it's just an app. You go into the app store, MyFitnessPal, and it is a game changer. I cannot even explain to you how this changed my life. It is the most simple to use platform there is, and it just does everything for you. You literally go onto the back of the packet of whatever you've eaten, or you made a meal, you just scan the various barcodes, scan the barcode, you type in the amount and you click enter, bang. That is it, done. I'll do a little demonstration video in the future of how to use the app, how to navigate it, because there are some features that are a little bit sort of trickier to use, but that is the general premise of it, and it is a lifesaver. So it calculates how many calories you've had, it works out the macros for it, and I always try and cheat it and try and find a barcode that it doesn't have in the system. When I was in like Thailand in a corner store, I don't understand it, I don't know where they've get the information from, but everything is there. A lot of people really get into the habit of using it, which is brilliant. And then they sort of say, oh, okay, but I went out to this restaurant and I was like, I had lasagna, for example, and obviously I don't know how much grams it was and whatnot. And you do have to sort of start, after a while, you naturally develop that eye for things, and you can start picking up on how many grams things are, and you'll get better at it than you think. But if you go to a restaurant, you can literally type on the app Italian lasagna and it comes up with Italian lasagna generic, and you sort of plug that in, and that's as close as you're sort of going to get. So it is a lifesaver, and whatever your goal is, if you don't have that, download it now. That is a matter of urgency. So we'll dive into nutrition again. So the sort of factors that I sort of cover that I briefly just discussed, is really understanding nutrition, understanding that it doesn't matter what diet you go on or how you decide to consume your calories or when you decide to consume your calories. If you do it in a 1 hour window or a 23-hour window, or keto or paleo, or if it fits your macros, this is just in regards to fat loss. It doesn't matter. The only thing that creates fat loss is a calorie deficit. So it really is just understanding these fundamentals. And then in terms of building muscle as well, then it describes what a surplus is and how we should be eating in a surplus and how we should increase it and when we should increase it. And again, I will make more in-depth content off the back of it to go into more detail to give you a better understanding of what exactly and how exactly we can go about this. I've also included a calculator, which is really useful. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I don't know how many calories I'm meant to be eating and whatnot, which is perfectly fine and understandable. So I've attached a calculator, which is really easy. You just go onto the website, you plug in your details, age, weight, height, activity level, click calculate, and it comes up with like 4 answers, and you just want to take your maintenance and it will explain the rest for you in the book. So nutrition for me was such a confusing topic because when I started researching a lot more around it and understanding it a lot better, and again going into depth within content providers and stuff online, I found out how easy it was and how straightforward it was. And I would look at the industry and be like, why are there so many people? I won't even get onto Weight Watchers or Slimming World because they are like, my blood boil. Why are these people trying to make these things so confusing? Now, don't get me wrong, there'll be a lot of variables for each person which can determine how quickly they lose fat or put on muscle, and vice versa. There will always be variables and factors which are discussed. However, the general concepts of both putting on muscle and staying the same weight and reducing fat are so simple and so easy to understand and learn. I never knew why everyone was ultimately trying to make it so difficult. So it's all there in a very simplistic format. And also just below it discusses hydration, which is a ridiculously fundamental part of it. And I was one of the guiltiest parties for just never drinking enough water. I literally tried everything, like getting those ridiculously big bottles that I sort of had for 2 weeks and then either break or just leave somewhere. But it is so important. I won't go into all the health benefits and whatnot, but ultimately it's something that's sort of often overlooked. And there is actually a little equation that I chuck in the book, which is how to work out the minimum you should be drinking a day, which is, like I said, the absolute minimum. Again, factors will influence this, like how hot it is in your climate and how intense your workouts are and whatnot, but it's definitely an important factor that I look at. So that leads us on to our last chapter in the book, which is Mythbusters, which is something that I definitely wanted to squeeze in there however I could, because this for me was one of the most important ones, just in terms of we hear so many things on a day-to-day. We hear so many bold claims, so many bold statements, not even just from influencers but from friends and family, such as I've tried this and I've done that and this works amazing and that works amazing, not to mention that a million variables that may have impacted how they benefited from something, but forgetting that. So what I wanted to do was have a really nice, short, sharp, sweet couple of pages just in bullet point forms, really laying out clearly what we can just ignore from the industry. Just total rubbish that we hear on a day-to-day. Now, don't get me wrong, in some of the things that people say, there are elements of truth. Naturally, there always will be, but the way that they're conveyed and the way that they're portrayed to people are so distorted, even if the original source meant it in a very honest and correct way. The classic case of Chinese whispers just creates it into some horrible monster, such as don't eat carbs, you'll get fat, which is my biggest pet hate in the industry. But I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. So yeah, that's pretty much just what it is in short bullet point form, just things that we can totally neglect out the industry and stuff that we really just want to drive home for ourselves, so we don't have to get caught up on these silly fads and phases and statements that people make just to potentially make themselves more relevant online. I don't know what the reason behind it is, but it doesn't help anyone, and it definitely doesn't help us to achieve our goals. So I definitely wanted to squeeze that in there, and I did, and it's the last chapter, so hopefully there's a few things in there that you didn't know before, or even a few things in there that you currently still think, and hopefully it can just help to dispel those sort of myths. So that pretty much concludes my first video. Now I have to make a confession. I filmed this at like 2 a.m. and I am speaking quite loudly despite the fact I've got a mic on, so if my housemates can hear me, I'm sorry. But I filmed the whole thing in small nuggets, and I tidied all the equipment away. I put all my furniture back because it's dotted around my room at the moment. Put the TV on, I got ready, I got changed, got ready for bed, laid in bed, looked at the first video and I just cut off half the top of my head, and I had like an hour and a half of content, or I'd been here sitting here for an hour and a half speaking in front of this camera. I just said, I've got to do it again. So I literally have just repeated that entire process, put everything back, got everything back to it was, got redressed, got ready again, and had to film it again because it was just frustrating me. It was just frustrating me, but there we go. And now I've got to go back and listen to my voice 100 times over to edit this video, which I'm not looking forward to, but it's part of the process, and I have to love the process. So if you did like the video, please firstly drop a thumbs up, and I cannot physically do that without dropping that in-betweeners reference, which I'm going to ping here. And it's like a law against me because my name's Will, so it wouldn't be right. And please drop a subscribe on the subscribe button, because like I said, I'm going to be making a lot more content. I'm going to be churning it out. And also please hit the bell on the notifications just down below here. I'm literally pointing, I have no idea if this is where it sits. Just to alert you when there is a new video, so you can always stay on top of my content. And lastly, please don't forget to read the ebook. I know I've been banging on about it, and this is what the whole video has been about, but it is there ultimately to help you. Even if you read through the whole thing and you only take away 1 or 2 pointers that you didn't know before that you can implement into your training, it is a very good place to start, and you never know how much impact they're going to have on you, because I did the very same thing, and I took a very small thing, what I thought was quite insignificant, out of another training plan, and it turned out to be huge. So please have a look through that. Please try and take it away with you and start implementing it into your quarantined home workouts, and hopefully the gym in a few weeks to come. And also the links are just below, just to drop a follow. I'm not sure why I keep pointing here. I don't know if I think they're going to be here. I hope they are, because that'll work out well. Please get in contact if you have any questions or any feedback or literally anything at all. On the website there is a contact form, or feel free just to message me on Facebook, Instagram, or even just to drop a comment in here. Whatever it is, I'll get back to you as quick as possible. And I don't have a lot to do at the moment because I'm very much avoiding my dissertation work, so I will get back to you nigh on instantaneously. So remember, subscribe, read the book on the website, drop me a follow, and stay indoors. Thanks for watching.